You just paid $600,000 for that charming fourplex, and suddenly your property manager casually mentions that half your rental income will vanish into expenses. Wait, 50%? Are they robbing you? Or is this actually normal? Here's the truth that separates dreamers from operators. In small multifamily real estate, that 50% expense ratio isn't just realistic, it's often conservative. While gurus on YouTube promise 70% profit margins, the actual investors quietly nodding along know that vacancy, maintenance, property management, insurance, taxes, utilities, and capital reserves don't care about your optimistic spreadsheet. Think of your building like a living organism that constantly demands feeding. Every month, roughly 10 to 15% disappears to property management fees, another 10 to 15% to maintenance and repairs, 5 to 10% to vacancy, even in hot markets, and the rest gets carved up by insurance that keeps climbing, property taxes that never sleep, and utilities you're covering between tenants. But here's where it gets interesting. The investors who survived 2008 aren't the ones who assumed 30% expenses and got blindsided. They're the ones who built in 50 to 60% cushions, slept well during recessions, and actually had cash reserves when the roof decided to retire early. The small multifamily game has always been about razor-thin margins amplified by leverage and time. A fourplex generating $4,000 monthly at 50% expenses still nets you $2,000. And after a $1,500 mortgage payment, you're building equity on someone else's dime while pocketing $500. Now contrast that with the optimism of 2019, when interest rates were 3% and everyone believed expenses would magically stay at 35% forever. Fast forward to today's 7% rates and insurance premiums that doubled overnight. And suddenly, those confident underwriting models look like fantasy fiction. The psychological shift hits hardest when you're 3 months into ownership and realize your estimates were fairy tales. You budgeted $2,000 for annual maintenance, but then the water heater explodes, the tenant's kid puts a fist through drywall, and the city decides your sidewalk needs replacing, all in the same quarter. Here's the pattern that repeats every cycle. New investors enter during euphoria with aggressive assumptions, get humbled by reality, then either adapt or exit. The survivors learn that vacancy isn't just about empty units, it's about turnover costs, painting, cleaning, advertising, and the 2 weeks between tenants that somehow always stretches to 6. Remember when everyone said real estate never goes down, then watch properties lose 40% of their value in 18 months? Those same people who assumed expenses would stay low also assumed appreciation was guaranteed, and they learned expensive lessons about the difference between underwriting and wishful thinking. History whispers if you're willing to listen. The investors who made generational wealth in real estate didn't do it by cutting expense assumptions to make deals pencil. They did it by being brutally honest about costs, buying anyway because the fundamentals worked, and holding through multiple cycles while the aggressive players washed out. The community of operators who've managed small multifamily for decades will tell you the same thing. 50% is your starting point, not your worst case. In older buildings or challenging markets, you might hit 60 or even 70% in rough years. And that's exactly why you never buy a property that only works at 40% expenses. Let's demolish the biggest misconception. Lower expenses don't make you a better investor. They make you a more vulnerable one. The property doesn't care what you put in your spreadsheet, and reality has a perfect track record of showing up whether you planned for it or not. So here's your actionable framework. Underwrite at 50% minimum, 55 if the building is older than 30 years, and 60 if you're new to the market. If the deal still produces positive cash flow and reasonable returns at those numbers, you've found something real instead of a pretty lie that explodes on contact with reality. The practical truth is that position sizing matters more than perfect predictions. Buy small enough that a bad year doesn't destroy you, large enough that a good year moves the needle, and always assume Murphy's Law is your silent partner who collects his fees in unexpected repairs. This isn't about pessimism, it's about preparing for the full range of outcomes and being genuinely comfortable with all of them. The investors sleeping well tonight aren't the ones who squeezed every assumption to make a deal work. They're the ones who bought conservatively and got surprised by upside instead of downside. At the end of every cycle, discipline, and rational sizing. Separate those building portfolios from those explaining what went wrong. 50% expenses might feel conservative today, but in 2 years, when insurance spikes again or the market softens, you'll thank yourself for the honesty that kept you solvent while others capitulated. If you're ready to find investment properties underwritten by realistic assumptions instead of fantasy, check out www.growthsense.com, where investors can browse and list multifamily properties that actually pencil in the real world.